Between 2010 and 2019, Atlanta added more than 730,000 new residents to its metro area. That's nearly the entire population of Seattle, moving to one city in less than a decade. Young professionals rank it as the #1 best city for career growth. Major corporations continue to relocate headquarters there. By nearly every economic metric, Atlanta is booming. And yet, Atlanta ranks 8th worst in America for traffic delays and 19th worst on the entire planet. Walking to run errands is so impractical that it scores 48 out of 100 on walkability ratings, officially classifying it as car-dependent. Out of 221 major metro areas, measured for sprawl, Atlanta came in at number 220. It's essentially tied for the most sprawled major city in the country. So why does one of America's most economically successful cities feel like it was designed by someone who had never met a human being before? In 1952, the first sections of the Downtown Connector opened through Atlanta. This is where Interstate 75 and Interstate 85 merge and run straight through the heart of the city. If you've ever driven through Atlanta, you've been on it. It's that wall of concrete and overpasses that splits downtown into half. The routing was never about traffic efficiency. A 1960 government report stated there was an understanding that the proposed route would serve as the boundary between the white and black communities. The highway was intended to function as a racial dividing line, and the neighborhoods it destroyed were selected specifically because of the people who lived there. Officials wrote it down in planning documents, presenting racial segregation as an explicit goal, wrapped in the language of urban renewal and modernization. Sweet Auburn was once the most prosperous, predominantly African-American commercial district in the entire United States. It was a thriving center of black business and culture, home to insurance companies, newspapers, and successful enterprises that represented decades of wealth building in the black community. The highway sliced directly through it. Community protests managed to save one major building, the Atlanta Life Insurance Company headquarters, but the route still carved through Auburn Avenue, splitting the neighborhood apart and devastating its economic foundation. The interchange where these highways meet virtually obliterated the neighborhood of Mechanicsville and wiped out hundreds of homes and businesses in nearby Summerhill. Entire blocks vanished under concrete. 89% of the approximately 14,000 people displaced in Atlanta due to freeway construction were people of color. The official justification was solving traffic congestion. Build the highways and traffic would flow freely. Except the highways filled up immediately with all the new traffic it just created. Before the 1996 Olympics, the Georgia Department of Transportation expanded the Downtown Connector from 6 lanes to 14 lanes of highway running through downtown. It failed and traffic remained just as congested. You'd expect officials to realize highway expansion doesn't work. They had proof and decades of evidence showing that building more lanes just generates more traffic. Instead, the Georgia Department of Transportation kept choosing highway widening as their solution to congestion throughout the entire metro region, repeating the same failed strategy over and over. So, we've answered the first question. Atlanta's highways were tools of racial segregation that predictably failed to solve traffic. Bad decisions from the 1950s created the framework for disaster, but something else had to lock it in place and make sure it couldn't be undone. For 35 years after those highways went in, Atlanta operated under a zoning code built on one assumption: everyone would drive everywhere for everything. The code was written as if cars were the only form of transportation that would ever exist. But here's the part that seems almost impossible. 50% of Atlanta's land area is currently zoned exclusively for single-family homes. Not 50% of residential land, 50% of all land in the city, half of everything. This includes land right next to the Beltline, which is supposed to be a model of walkable development. It includes land near the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority stations, MARTA, where you'd expect dense housing that would let people use transit. In any functional city, the areas closest to rapid transit would be zones for apartments, shops, and offices, so residents could live without depending on cars. In Atlanta, the zoning code looked at the places where density would make the most sense and said no, only single-family houses allowed. Planners analyzed Atlanta's historic neighborhoods, the ones people love and pay premium prices to live in. Places with small apartment buildings, duplexes, corner stores where you can walk to grab coffee. They found that most of these beloved neighborhoods would be illegal to build today under current zoning. The city had made it against the law to recreate the types of places that function well. When you make density illegal, growth has to go somewhere. Between 2000 and 2010, Atlanta's urban land area expanded nearly 35%. This sprawl was the inevitable result of regulations that made urban development functionally impossible. Then there's parking. Downtown Atlanta had 18,507 parking spaces in 1953. By 2014, that number had grown to 93,000 spaces. That's a 500% increase in parking infrastructure. The zoning code required developers to build specific amounts of parking for every new project. These requirements were so aggressive that new mixed-use buildings, even ones right next to transit stations, had to dedicate a third or more of their space to parking decks. This created an impossible situation. Land in the city is expensive. If you have to spend a third of your budget on parking, you can't build enough housing or commercial space to make dense development work financially. So, developers build in the suburbs instead, where land is cheaper and parking is easier to accommodate. The zoning code effectively pushed development away from the places where it should have been concentrated. But zoning and parking mandates are just policies on paper. They explain why Atlanta kept sprawling outward, but they don't explain what it feels like to exist in this city as a human being trying to do something as simple as walk to a store. Because the real horror of Atlanta's design isn't visible on a zoning map or in a parking requirement. It's visible when you try to use your own 2 feet. Imagine you're walking down a street in Atlanta. There's a sidewalk. It seems fine. You're making progress toward the store or wherever you're trying to go. Then the sidewalk just ends and dumps you directly onto the shoulder of a busy road with cars flying past at 45 miles per hour. You're left standing there trying to figure out whether to risk your life on the road or just give up and go back. Only 46% of potential sidewalk links exist across the city. The city made individual property owners responsible for building and maintaining sidewalks in front of their homes and businesses. This created a completely random patchwork. If one house had perfect concrete, the next house would have crumbling pavement full of cracks and holes. The house after that, nothing at all. There's no continuity, no planning, no assurance that you can complete a journey on foot. And if you have any mobility challenge whatsoever, huge portions of the city are inaccessible. The infrastructure that would allow independent mobility for people with disabilities doesn't exist in vast swaths of the city. Of course, Atlanta has MARTA. The trains exist, the buses exist, but residents report that MARTA feels inaccessible because there are no sidewalks from the MARTA station. You can see the bus stop from your house, but there's no safe path to reach it. People walk in the street, including children and elderly residents, just to reach bus stops. MARTA has another problem that's almost uniquely absurd. It's the only major public transportation system in America that receives zero funding from its state government. The state of Georgia gives MARTA nothing. When MARTA was being planned in the 1960s and 70s, suburban counties were given the option to join and help fund the system. Suburban counties refused, driven by barely coded fears that transit would bring criminals or bums from the city. What they really meant was they didn't want black residents from Atlanta to have easy access to their communities. This forced MARTA to rely almost entirely on a sales tax levied on city residents to fund a system that couldn't expand into the sprawling suburbs where it was desperately needed. Without state funding, MARTA stayed small. The system couldn't extend into the growing suburbs where millions of people were moving. The suburbs kept sprawling. Millions of people had no choice except to drive, which filled the highways, which made traffic worse, which prompted officials to widen highways again, which induced more sprawl, which made transit even less viable. Every element fed into every other element, creating a cycle of dysfunction that seemed impossible to escape. So here's the obvious question. If the highways failed, if the zoning made things worse, if the sidewalks don't exist, and if transit can't function, why doesn't Atlanta just fix it? Well, Atlanta is now attempting to reverse decades of car-first infrastructure, and the price tag of bad design is expensive. The city is pursuing a complete rewrite of its zoning code, trying to move away from suburban rules toward genuinely urban regulations. The goal is to allow density, eliminate parking minimums, and enable walkable neighborhoods. This is essentially an admission that 35 years of zoning policy were wrong from the start. Then there's the Stitch, a proposal to bury the northern portion of the downtown connector under a cap and create 14 acres of green space on top. This would reconnect street grids that were severed in the 1950s and stitch neighborhoods back together. The optimistic cost estimate for the Stitch is $300 million. A separate project to cap a freeway in Midtown was estimated at $1 billion. Atlanta is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to buy back basic urban functionality that was deliberately destroyed 70 years ago. The city had connected neighborhoods, walkable streets, and thriving commercial districts before the highways demolished them. Now Atlanta is paying a massive premium to recreate what it once had for free. MARTA is also finally getting serious investment through a program called More MARTA Atlanta. $2.7 billion over 40 years for expansion, focusing on bus rapid transit and other modes. This is the largest transit investment in 4 decades. It's also a clear signal of how far behind Atlanta has fallen. Other cities have been consistently investing in transit for generations. Atlanta starved its system for so long that it now requires billions just to approach basic functionality. The financial costs of these fixes tell you everything you need to know about Atlanta's design legacy. Highway caps cost billions, and zoning rewrites take decades to implement and decades more to show results. Transit expansion requires sustained political will that Atlanta has never consistently provided. Every single fix is trying to retrofit urbanism onto a suburban framework that was never meant to support it. Atlanta's design was optimized for a very specific vision. Wide highways would let white suburban families drive into the city for work, then retreat to racially separated neighborhoods at night. Dense urban living would be discouraged or made illegal. The entire system was built to maintain segregation while enabling economic activity in the downtown core. That vision failed completely. What Atlanta got instead was a city that works poorly for almost everyone. Commutes are miserable regardless of race or income. Housing is increasingly expensive as demand concentrates in the few walkable neighborhoods that survived. The demand to live and work in Atlanta isn't going away. The city's economic advantages are real. Companies keep moving there. Young professionals keep choosing it. The job market remains strong, but every year without change is another year of lost productivity, worsening inequality, and mounting costs that compound over time. The zoning rewrites, the highway caps, the transit investments, the sidewalk construction, these billion-dollar projects are just the beginning of what will likely be a multi-generational effort to undo the damage. Other American cities face similar challenges. Rochester, Syracuse, and San Francisco are tearing down or capping urban highways. Cities across the country are rewriting zoning codes to allow denser development. But few cities combine Atlanta's explosive growth with such foundational dysfunction. The city is paying an extraordinary price to slowly, expensively, and painfully become the place it could have been from the start. Atlanta was never doomed to be this way. The dysfunction was chosen, and now, decades later, Atlanta is spending billions to undo those choices and build the city that should have existed all along.